Welcome. I'm Faye Waterman, the conversation curator, and this is What's Your Superpower, the podcast. And my guest today is the amazing Donna Burton, who is more affectionately known as Donna the Astronomer. And we will learn more about Donna and how she got the name Donna Astronomer shortly. But welcome, Donna, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Faye, for having me. Looking forward to it.
It's my pleasure, always my pleasure to have a conversation with you, Donna. Now, Donna, what we want to know about you is why you fell in love and became passionate about astronomy and how you share that with the world, and share some of your superpowers along the way, what you're really good at, and why people need to come and share time with you so that they can learn and have an appreciation of the night sky.
Well, that's a really long list there. So I was lucky. I grew up in the bush. So I grew up under dark skies, and something that I didn't realize that not everybody appreciated. It wasn't until I was probably almost an adult that I realized that how privileged I'd been to grow up in Outback Australia, where we have stars in the sky at night. And there are children in the world who've never seen the stars in the sky. And I didn't realize this until not that many years ago. And that probably rekindled and repushed my passion into starting my own, what I'm doing now. But yeah, but having grown up under there, I grew up under the wonders of it. And of course, also my age doesn't help in the sense that we go back in time. There wasn't anything to do at night while you're out, in the outback. My dad was a drover and we traveled around a lot. There was no TVs and no radios. Occasionally we'd have radio, but signals were pretty hard to get. And certainly no internet or anything, or iPads or iPhones or anything we have today. So all I did have was the night sky. And so we'd get chuffed off to bed. The kids and the grown-ups would be off playing poker or talking and looking after the animals and all the stuff that grown-ups do. And so there's nothing to do but look at the night sky. And I was so lucky that we had people from all different cultures, Indigenous people and people from Afghan cultures and Chinese and different cultures who'd gone back to the outback. Like my dad had gone back to droving because he'd been to Vietnam. And he came back from Vietnam and he was somewhat stressed out. And as we know, we didn't treat our Vietnam vets very well at all. And so he went back to the bush. And so went with him. And that's where I grew up. A lot of my growing up was with him in the bush. So it was really good. But with these other fellows who were also in similar, they were misfits in some ways. They didn't fit in the cities and everything else. And so you sort of had this really weird combination. And it was an interesting growing up process in a lot of ways, in the sense that I had so much freedom and I learned so much. I learned so much stories of the sky. I learned to know the stars and to navigate by the stars before I even understood what I was even doing. I learned trigonometry and geometry and basic mathematics. Well, not so basic mathematics compared to what kids learn today, off these guys by learning how the sky moved and how the stars changed from night to night. And so it really kindled my love of science and math and everything else. And because we were doing School of the Air, I could concentrate on all the stuff I really liked and all the boring stuff. And I did well enough to get through okay, but I sort of would not spend as much time and effort on it as I would on the interesting stuff. Hence why I'm so much better at math, science, and not so brilliant at English.
It's interesting. You said one thing that particularly struck me was that there are some kids in the world that have never seen stars. And I find that absolutely mind-blowing, that you don't get to see the stars in the sky. And why is that, Donna?
Light pollution. Think of your cities: London, New York, Paris. Let's go into Asia, Tokyo, even Osaka, Seoul, Korea, Beijing, Shanghai, even Guangzhou, the biggest cities in the world. There's so much light. And I spoke to a 25-year-old and it blew my brain out. He was from Beijing. He was a university student. He'd come to one of my shows in Coonabarabran. And he asked me a question that I thought he was taking the mickey out of me. And you'll think it too when I tell you. But I really thought he was taking the mickey out of me. He said, "How come, Donna, I can see the moon in the daytime sky is it a southern hemisphere thing? Because he'd never seen the moon even in the daytime sky.
I actually saw the moon the other day in the daytime sky. It was beautiful.
And it was following you as usual?
The half moon was following me when I was walking. It was, and I look at it and I think Donna's going to think I'm crazy, but I'm watching it and it's following me. And I know you say it doesn't follow me, but I'm going to keep that because that's my special thing with the moon.
That's all right. That can be your special power.
But when you grew up and you learned to read the stars and see the different shapes of the stars in the sky and look at the moon and really get an understanding for it, because when drovers were droving, they drove by the sky, the night sky. They knew what the weather was going to be like. They knew what direction they were going and all that sort of thing. Is that right?
To some degree, in the old timers in particular, by the time my dad and them's doing it, they had watches and things like that. And we were following the long paddock, so it was a well-known track. But the Indigenous folks really would navigate by the sky, by the different constellations. Like their signposts in the sky, they're not like how we see constellations, but they're basically trails in the sky that match places on the ground. So in Indigenous astronomy, the dreaming is basically what's up there is down here, reflects the two reflect each other. So the river on the ground reflects the river in the sky, which is the Milky Way. And so everything's tied to it. And so, yeah, so it was really cool learning that. But also, yeah, the ability to predict weather by the stars was really wonderful. I still use that to this day, and I'm impressed my friends with my weather predicting abilities when I can actually see the sky. At the moment, we've had a week of clouds, so I haven't seen the sky. But yeah, because by the way the stars twinkle, how high up in the sky the stars twinkle, how bright or how dim they are in different places in the sky. You know, different things tell us things. Now, as a scientist, I know it's because there's frontal systems coming through and that changes the turbulence in the upper atmosphere, which makes the stars look as if they're more twinkly than they are. And obviously things down low to the horizon are very colourful. If you've gone out, you might have seen Jupiter or Venus in the morning sky. When they're first coming up, they are so super colourful. And that's solely because of the pollution in our atmosphere, or out here where we don't have as much pollution, bushfire smoke and dust and things. You can tell an awful lot by looking at the sky. And so far I've been pretty good. And like you have the stories of the emptying and the holding moon. So you know your crescent moon. So you know how sometimes it's like a catching moon. So it's like it's like so it can hold the rain.
Yes, yes.
So that means it's not going to rain. But when it starts to move around, so it becomes an emptying moon.
Right. It's going to rain.
It's predicting rain's going to happen. And of course, we all know about halos around the moon. We've all seen those beautiful halos around the moon.
What do they mean? What are they?
They're basically just the light, because the moon's reflecting sunlight. And we know what rainbows are. Rainbows come because of the rain, the light going through the raindrops between you and the sun, and you get this beautiful breakdown of the visible spectrum. We just call it a rainbow. Sort of pretty cool. But the same thing is happening, because if you really look at that halo around the moon, it's at a certain angle away from the moon, but it's also got colour in it at times because it's reflecting the sunlight through the ice crystals, and you've got a very stable upper atmosphere. And it basically tells you the bigger the halo, the further away the rain, the closer the halo, the closer the rain. And if the moon's off-centered in the halo, then that tells us that it's going to be windy. So if you live up in the north of the country and it's in this season, November through February, March, if you're living in this sort of season and you see the halo, you see lots of twinkling stars really high up into the sky and the moon's off-centered, you know that there's bad weather like cyclones and these rain depressions that we're suffering at the moment coming through.
Wow. It's pretty interesting, isn't it? And I have to plead ignorance, although we have many conversations, Donna, and I learn so much, but there's always something else when we have a conversation that I learn. And the fascination, I mean, the moon, but all the different shapes that are in the sky at night and where they come from and what part of the world that they're in. Talk about some of those.
So you've got your basic zodiac signs, the ones that everybody knows. They look up their horoscope by, and we won't go into that one because that's can get me on my soapbox really well. But got your 12 signs of the zodiac, which we all know what our star sign is. So what's your star sign?
Capricorn.
Capricorn. So your star sign's visible every part of the year except in January.
Why except in January?
Because that's when the sun's in Capricorn.
Oh, okay.
And so the Capricorn's where the sun is, so you can't see the constellation because it's where the sun is. So during the day, it's where it is until it moves on during the month. So the sun is actually moving against the background stars. So these stars, Capricorn, Leo, Gemini, Pisces, all of these stars, Sagittarius and Scorpio, they're all so far away and all different things. And they're just man-made shapes. We've made the shapes up and called them all from the ancient Greek times, and it stayed through. Chinese have their own zodiac. Indians have their own zodiac. Indian people from India. And various cultures have their own zodiac, all those sort of things. But the ones that we all know the best are that, plus, of course, things like Orion, the saucepan, or the pot if you're a New Zealander, which is visible quite well at the moment. It's because it's a winter constellation to us. Whereas in the Northern Hemisphere, of course, it's a different season. It's a summer, I can't even remember what month we're in. It's a summer constellation for us, whereas a winter constellation in the Northern Hemisphere.
Mm-hmm.
And so people see both. People in the Northern and the Southern Hemisphere see all the 12 or 13 signs of the zodiac with Orpheus chucked in there between Scorpio and Sagittarius, fill in the gap.
Why is that? And what was it called again?
Orpheus.
Orpheus.
Yes,
Okay.
I say it very badly, but it's the healer. And basically it's because the sun doesn't stay in Scorpio for more than 7 days. It stays an extra week in Libra, then a week in Scorpio, and then 2 weeks in Orpheus before it moves into Sagittarius. But of course, if you think you're a Scorpion, you're more likely to be something else. And that's solely because of a thing called precision, because the Earth's tilted, and as the Earth's tilt, so the angle that we travel through 12,500 years changes how we see the sky. Like at the moment, the North Star is Polaris, the pole star, but in 12,000 years' time, it'll be something completely different. That's the way, just because of how we're moving through space against the background stars. And so over 6,000 years or so, we've the original signs of the zodiac have changed. The sun's position in them has changed.
Wow. I see, and I've learned something new again today. But I want to say something, and we want to acknowledge your superpowers, and your superpower is what you're talking about now, everything that you're talking about. But you've discovered 2 comets. They're not called after you, and you're the first Australian woman, or first woman in the world, or first Australian.
Yeah,
first Australian woman to discover 2 comets, and you're looking for your third, and your third one's going to be called after you. How do you look for comets in the sky? What is it that you do? What does a comet actually look like?
And that's a difficult question. Let's go back to, I guess we'll talk about one of my actual true superpowers. Is I have an almost photographic memory. And this helps a lot because when you're looking for comets or asteroids or supernovas or novas, things that change in the sky, because I'm not just looking for comets, I'm looking for near-Earth objects, asteroids. I'm looking for anything that's different. I'm looking for something out past another object out past Pluto, or something unique and different that's in the sky. And to do that, you need to know what the sky looks like. So when you're looking through the telescope, when you look when I say I'm showing you Jupiter, say I'm showing someone Jupiter through the telescope and it's 4 moons and I can identify them all for them, it's very magnified. And so it's really easy, you know what you're looking at. But then if you use a lower magnification eyepiece, so you're looking at a great big broader part of the sky, there's lots and lots of stars there, and there are patterns in them, but they're not as big as the patterns like Orion, the saucepan, or the Seven Sisters, or things like that. So it's recognizing that something is different. And this is how most discoveries are made. You're looking for something that's different. Now, I do it by eye. At the moment, I'm probably going to set up, as I'm getting older, I'm going to set up one of my telescopes to help me do it automatically, like I used to do at work. Because we used to do it automatically at work, where you'd look at the sky, you take images of the sky 20 minutes apart of the same part of the sky. So you take 10 parts of the sky, then 20 minutes later, another 10 parts. And then you'd basically stack them together in software, and all the stars and everything would just match up, and you'd be looking for anything that was different, that was moving, that wasn't matching up. Now, most of the time it was an asteroid or a comet or something that already was known about. But it was when you couldn't match it up to something else that you got all excited. And I mean, I often got excited only to find someone discovered it the night before and I hadn't read the stuff yet. But I've often discovered other people's comments the next day. It's really frustrating.
I think so.
It's a numbers game. You've got to be spending a lot of time looking. And the good thing that we've got in the Southern Hemisphere is we don't have any big survey telescopes anymore. I used to work on the survey telescope up at Uppsala, the Near Earth Object Survey, but we lost funding when years ago, when the US dollar dropped and our dollar went up. And so because we're funded in US dollars, we lost about 20% overnight of our funding.
What a shame.
And astronomy is basically based upon getting funding and grants and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So these days I do it all myself. Setting up my big telescope to help me do it, the 40-inch, is what I'm looking at setting up to actually do it a lot better. Probably by the end of this year, I'll have that all automated. So I can spend a few hours a night sleeping and get up and check it all, because you want to check it before it's the Northern Hemisphere. So if you have found something, you can have people following it up and report it. Because the last thing you want to do is go to bed, wake up at 2:00 in the afternoon and find out that somebody over in the Northern Hemisphere has discovered what you actually discovered the night before, but didn't actually look at. So it's one of the things that I've always learned is I would never go to bed without checking all my data, because I didn't want to get picked at the post. See, I'm very competitive. Have you noticed?
Well, you know what? There's nothing wrong with being competitive. I mean, how many astronomers or how many real astronomers are there in the world who are constantly searching to see what they can find in the sky? How many amateur astronomers are there out there that are learning and watching and doing all that sort of stuff? And how many kids would be fascinated with learning about the night sky? And you can teach them how to do that, can't you?
That I can, but it's more encouraging people, because let me just go back to your amateur and professional thing. I mean, there are amateur astronomers out there with better equipment, so-called amateur astronomers. The difference between an amateur and a professional is I get paid.
Right.
For years I was an amateur, and I still do amateur astronomy work, as in I still do all the sorts of stuff, and in lots of ways I'm a science communicator. Even though I still do research and everything else, I'm more of a science communicator. But my astronomy is my passion. It is my love, just as it is for those who we brand amateurs. The difference is a lot more amateurs are actually looking at the sky. So-called amateurs are actually looking at the sky. So I'm going to use the word non-professional. Are looking at the sky and imaging the sky, be it looking for near Earth objects, be it doing actual science on variable stars, be it looking for anything out there, the novas, the supernovas, things that change in the sky night by night. There are loads of people doing that. The professionals have got the access to the big telescopes, but more and more as the telescopes get bigger, it's harder to get time on them. And then the smaller telescopes are being shut down in the professional world. So these guys, a lot of these, and I'm going to use the word guys because unfortunately most of them are, who have the good gear, have worked their way up, are males. And that's not a reflection on the industry. It's just a reflection on how much money you've got. Yeah, and it's a different thing. It's an all-night thing, and it's not really something that really a lot of even professional astronomers who are women, the observational astronomer, like who'll go to the telescope, who'll do observational stuff, the proportion of us who are female is lower than the male, but overall we're greater in Australia. Particularly we're more than 50-50
That's
in professional, because astronomy isn't just looking through a telescope. It's looking at data, it's collecting data off telescopes, astrobiology, looking at how we can discover life on other planets. Radio astronomy, of course, is a different field, X-ray astronomy. These are fields that don't need the observational astronomy. So the concept of an astronomer is someone who sits at a telescope all night, every night, is really archaic in the sense that these days very few people ever go up to our big telescopes. Everything's done over the internet these days. And so, the people who are struggling out in their backyards, even amateur, so-called non-professional, so-called amateurs, building equipment and automating it so that they also don't have this. They don't, you see all the amazing pictures on the internet that come from Hubble and James Webb, but you also see these pictures, astronomy's pictures of the day done by the non-professional astronomers, and they're phenomenal. But they can take 3 or 4 weeks to process one shot. They might take hours to actually make the images by taking multiple images and multiple filters over many, many hours over multiple nights. And then they put it all together and they draw out every bit of information. And even though we argue amongst ourselves over, how much pink colour is and how much red colour is and everything else, those colours actually aren't real in the sense that you can't actually see those colours. Those colours represent, in the scientific field, they represent gases, elements, things that those galaxies, those stars, formations, those things are made up of. So those are the sort of things that it's becoming in anybody's realm to do. Once upon a time, you need $100,000. You need a huge telescope worth millions of dollars.
What is a constellation?
A constellation is just a grouping of stars in the sky that we give a name to.
Right.
And the stars could be thousands of light years away from each other. Take the Southern Cross, which is the smallest of the constellations, and the one probably we all know well because it's on our flag. Most of us can see it. Even you should be able to see 4 stars of the cross from where you live. But when we can see the 5th star. But basically, those stars vary from 400 light years away to over nearly 4,500 light years away. They're nowhere near each other, but you're just seeing them against the background. It's sort of like if you put little rods in the ground at all different heights and you look down on them, you get the picture of them all, but all the sticks are different heights, so different distances. And that's why every culture in the world have got their own constellations. From the point of view of Western astronomy, we've basically stuck to those of the Babylonians and the Romans and the Greeks of around 6,000 years ago that came down to that. In the 1920s, the International Astronomical Union decided what 88 constellations we would actually have out of the hundreds there are. So basically, that's why we have the current constellations that we have, is because they decided it. But basically, as a kid, I used to see all sorts of things. I could see camels and horses and cattle and sheep and kangaroos. I could see everything in the sky because your imagination is such. And that's one of the things by bringing people, grown-ups, kids, whoever, from out of the city, away from the city lights, out into a dark place location, so that they can actually see the Milky Way. They can see the milkiness and why our galaxy is called the Milky Way. They can see the stars in the sky. And, I play a game with kids where they make up their own constellations. I tell everyone they've got to come up with a picture in the sky and give them my pointer so they can draw it for me. And these days we get really interesting, more technologically advanced descriptions. We always get our unicorns, of course, and our T-Rexes, but we do get all sorts of interesting things.
Yeah, it is interesting. I want to take you to something because you've mentioned the size of telescopes and the prices they cost, but you can actually make telescopes, which is another of your superpowers. You can put a telescope together. You can build telescopes for yourself, and you could put them together and sell them to other people.
Well, certainly I build them for myself. The amount of work that goes into them is a bit much that nobody else could probably afford them. I've been trying to get funding for school holidays where we can get a whole stack of mirrors and we can actually we can have the kids build telescopes from ready-made mirrors.
That would be fantastic.
So that they'll learn all the physics and the optics and everything else that's involved in working out into math. So there's a lot of science in there. So it's a STEM project I'm trying to find funding for at the moment, to be able to build small 4-inch telescopes.
Can I be one of those school kids and come along?
Yeah, I tell people at my show that a kid is anyone under 99.
Thank you. It's interesting because there's so much in the night sky to learn about, and until you're exposed to some of the information, you really don't take any notice of the night sky. It is just there, and you'll see a few stars, and you'll see the moon, and you'll see the sunrise, and you'll see the sunset. I want to bring the clouds into it, because is there something with the clouds and the night sky? And you said you can see all sorts of shapes in the stars. You can make them up and you can see them, and you get the kids to. But when you look at clouds, you can see shapes in clouds. And the other morning when I was walking, I saw the shape of a hand.
Yeah, I see genies. I think I obviously have a lantern on the brain. But you can see, but it's also how we see things. And this is basically when you go back to the ancients, when they came out and they looked up at the sky, and each of these constellations, particularly of the zodiac, all relate to their myths and legends. So they've got, and their gods and their goddesses and all of that sort of stuff, remembering they had multiple gods, gods for agriculture, gods for all the different things. But the sky represented the home of the gods. And so the myths and the legends and the stories and everything else that they lived in were represented, and that's where the constellations came, the zodiac constellations came from. And the same with Indigenous people. They've got their own stories of the sky, and mostly, particularly the one most people know about is, of course, the emu in the sky, which is visible from March through September. And it basically gives them a calendar, a season on when to move and hunt and all sorts of things. And so it comes down to how we see things as individuals. So we see things in the clouds, we see things in the stars. That's where it all began. And one of the things I wanted to say, sorry, is
No,
I do want to talk about at some stage, is these days it's so much easier for young people. The technology is cheaper. Telescopes are far more cheaper now to get started with. Digital telescopes are becoming really easy that they can run with their iPhones or Samsungs or whatever phone they've got. But these days there's so many apps on your phone that you can just point it at, just go in there, set it up and point it at the sky, and it'll tell you all, it'll tell you all about it. It'll tell you what you're looking at. And other apps will also, you can plug it in and say, I want to look at the Intuit sky, and it will show you the Intuit. The Intuit's are Eskimo, what we used to call Eskimos. So the Intuit stories, or the Indigenous stories of the Milroy, the Wiradjuri people, or Mayans, or many cultures. You can go in there and look at how of their pictures in the sky as opposed to what we see as Westerners.
right.
So it's much easier for kids to get into astronomy. And I ban phones at my show mainly because of light. And tell them they can fact check me later. But it's because if everyone's looking at their phones, A, they're not listening to me, which is really annoying. But B, it's the light is frustrating because it affects everybody. Because what we have is where we are is we have no light. So once we turn the lights off, we're away from the town. We're on a mountain. We're on the edge of the dark sky park. And so what's so wonderful is watching over the next 5 or 10, 15 minutes, depending on people's age, as their eyes adjust to the darkness, how many more stars they can see.
You mentioned the cities earlier and how much there's too much light in the city to actually have an appreciation or really see the sky and see what's in it. How can we reduce the light pollution? I mean, when I go walking down by the water, and sometimes there's these huge big lights that are shining, and I'm thinking, turn those stupid things off. I don't want them on. I want this darkness so I can have an appreciation for this early morning sky.
Yeah, so what you need is this, obviously get away from lights, but what we need is to ourselves, and that's what I teach my little light warriors. I call them my little dark sky warriors, to harass their parents and grandparents and everybody, all the grown-ups, to turn lights off at home, to reduce the amount your security lights have to be on for. Like, why do people's security lights have to be on half an hour? How long does it take to open a door? And if you've got lighting, have your lighting under an awning, so the light's shining downwards. And if you've got a council that's got lights that shine up into the sky or haven't got coverings, push for full cut-off lighting. And that's what we need to do to save our night sky one light at a time. We need to be campaigning with our councils. And because that's another thing that I do, is I help people put together applications and everything else. And when they're trying to put things to councils. Councils say you're building a new sports arena in your town, and you've got those big bright lights. Well, you want them to be full cut off and to be the right type of lights to shine down at the sky. And now we're going into LEDs, where LEDs are so much more brighter. You just have to look at driving along at night, and people have got LED lights on their car. They blind you almost.
Yes, they do. They actually do.
There are lighting principles and lighting policies throughout the country, and with the lighting engineers and that there are lighting engineers who can advise councils on the correct form of lighting. That also gives people security, because people don't like not having light because they don't feel safe. But we're not saying don't have light. We're just saying light that goes upwards is wasteful. Tell me, why do big buildings in the city have to have lights on all night? They're not working there.
I have no idea. No idea.
It's one of the things that we know we've got to have lights on top of buildings for navigation purposes to protect aeroplanes and everything else. But we don't need to see their great big NEC, whatever company they are, signs everywhere. So super, super bright.
And you don't need to see in the buildings. You don't need all the lights in the buildings and all that sort of thing in the cities, because there's just lights left on in offices and all that sort of stuff that are not needed. And I mean, even when you have light, and you have windows facing out into yards and wherever, that light reflects out into the night sky and takes the night sky away.
Yeah, and also if you think of things like if you've got white or concrete pathways and things like that, and your light's shining on that and it's reflecting up. Pool lights are the worst, because you've got a pool and you're out there at night, but all the light's reflecting off the pool and off the surrounds of the pool, which is normally light coloured, and that's just adding to the light pollution.
The pool lights that are sitting in the pool, they give off a pretty lights of the water and things like that. So they are not so bad as the lights that sit outside the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a matter of just thinking. It's like, okay, if I leave my window open at night, now we're very light protected here, because we're 3 k's from Siding Spring Observatory, and we're not allowed to have any outdoor lights. Now, we have had to break that rule when we've had the vet out at night and had to put up little work lights and things like that. But yeah, we just pull our blinds down and we've got curtains that are dark and it's so much better. And then you can just walk out and not have, if you turn all your lights off in your house, right, and you've got no lights except the ones that you need, and you close your windows and put your blinds up, then you want to walk outside. It doesn't take you as long, because the light that's coming from those windows are still affecting your seeing. You won't get full dark seeing.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. I mean, I only have the lights on that I need on, and I don't have any lights on. A lot of the time I'll just have candles burning and no lights, because I don't like a lot of light at night.
But I mean, in this day we're all worried about our electricity bills. Reducing light pollution is actually going to save us all money. It'll save councils money. It'll save, which hopefully will keep our rates down, and it saves all of us as individuals on our electricity bill.
Yeah, so it's having an appreciation for, learning about the night sky and at night. I know people that have got, oh my God, there's so many lights in their ceilings and things like this, and I'm thinking, what are you doing with all these lights? Can't you turn them off?
Yeah, one light at a time, we can save the world. But I mean, it's not just the night sky, which is for me really, really important, but it's our health is affected by all the lighting. I mean, children in cities never get total darkness. No. And there's research being done that's showing that the incidence of behavioural diseases like ADHD and all those things are much higher in the cities than it is in rural areas throughout the world, because the kids never get dark skies. They never get to see perfect darkness.
And there's nothing nicer than having perfect darkness. If you stay out in the country where there are no street lights and there are no lights on the outside, turned on the outside of a house, and you just walk outside, there's this magic about the darkness.
Yeah. And you take a chair out or something, take something you can lay down on. You got the kids' trampoline is the best because it's nicely off the ground and so the ants don't bite you. But lay down and just let your eyes adjust to the thing. So even in the city, if you can lay down in an area where you're dark, right, where you've got all your lights off, and you can block off street lights by your house and stuff, you'll actually see more than you'll think you can.
Wow. It's pretty exciting stuff
It's an
when you,
experiment to try.
yeah, lots of fun things that you could do that actually don't cost money. They cost you a bit of time to, you could go down to the beach and put a blanket down or a towel down and lie on the sand and look up at the night sky as long as there's no light shining, because they have boat areas where they keep the lights on, all these sorts of things. But if you can find a spot where it's kind of dark, it'd be magical to just watch the night sky.
And particularly in the early morning when the meteor showers before the sun comes up, if there's no moon and stuff, and there's a really good meteor shower, because they're bright and you can't see as many in the city as you can in the country. But if you can find yourself a dark spot, it is so worth going out and looking. Like the ones that were last December that were great. People saw them in all sorts of places. And of course, you're down in the southern part of the country at the moment. The auroras are being visible. And you're not going to see them if you've got all the light pollution.
And
they're spectacular. I mean, I haven't seen them myself. I'm a jinx. If I go there, it'll be cloudy, so you won't see any auroras.
I actually saw a small part of an aurora out on the bay, sort of a distance away, just a small part last year, I think it would have been. And the moon the other morning was sort of like a banana moon. And as you said, it was sort of tilted. So there was no rain. It was capturing the rain. Yeah. And now, see, I've learned something about the moon now, way it's facing. And then if it's tilted, upright, then the rain can come down. Didn't know that. It's quite amazing what I learned, Donna, from you.
There's a New Zealand legend of a New Zealand princess. She was out walking and she was carrying a water bottle, a jug. She was carrying the jug and she was out walking in the dark. And she tripped over and she cursed. Oh, the moon went behind a cloud or something. Anyway, she cursed the moon. And this didn't go down very well with the powers that be. And so she's now in the moon where we see a rabbit or something. She's in the moon. And basically, as the moon tilts, her urn empties the water or her urn catches the water.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So right around the world, there's many, many stories. So I guess one of the things I enjoy is talking to different people in different places and just sharing different stories and having school groups come out. And because they come out, I'll have groups come out year after year, not the same kids, same class, but different kids. But like trying to come up with something new and unique to get these kids to go back to the city and be inspired and keep the teachers, keep bringing them. So, and some of these groups have been coming out here for 10 years or more.
That's fantastic.
I must be doing something right.
Well, you have to be, and I have to come and visit. But I went outside. When I see the light outside, and it's usually the moon, and I can see it in certain areas because there's lots of trees around me. And I tried to take a photo just by my camera, not by the apps that I've got on my camera because I don't know how to use those apps. We'll have to do a training on how to use the apps on your phone so you can take better photos. But I have to sit it there. That's the only thing I got. It was the moon's there, but the reflection of the light with the moon.
Is that an iPhone?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll send you some notes.
Yeah.
On an app called Nightcap, which will help you a lot.
You
have to pay for it. It's not very expensive. It's $2.99 US, $4.49 Australian.
Right.
But it's a brilliant app, and I recommend it to anybody because you can take star trails, meteor trails. You can do all sorts of photography with it, and it's simple.
And I've got my binoculars sitting here so that I can stand outside and look up at the sky too, just to get a little bit of a closer view. It's
Okay,
not
I have a
like
challenge for you.
telescope. Okay.
So you know the saucepan,
Yes.
Orion, right? Or the pot if you're a New Zealander. I like saying the pot in New Zealand.
Pot.
Yes, just practice my accent. So you know the handle of the saucepan?
Yes.
Okay, I want you to take your binoculars and I want you to look at the 3 stars in the handle of the saucepan and
Okay.
see that they're not just 3 stars.
It's not 3 stars.
It's
Okay.
not just 3 stars. There's
Okay.
a fantastic fuzzy area called the Orion Nebula there. And on either side of it, the stars on either side of it are clusters of very young stars.
And one thing I did learn is that the stars do die, but how long do they live for and how do they die? And how do you know that you're looking at a star that's alive or dead?
So with really old stars, that can probably be difficult. But with stars, take Sirius. It's the brightest star in the sky. I mean, Jupiter's the brightest thing in the sky at the moment, but Sirius is the brightest star in the sky. It's the wishing star, starlight, star bright, first star that I see tonight. So the wishing star, it comes up early in the night and it's super, super bright. It's about 7.5 light years away from us. It's about 30 million years old.
Right.
And it probably won't see its 100 millionth birthday. Mightn't even
Okay.
see its 50 millionth birthday. So this is a very young, very large star, which will blow up and go supernova and light up the sky and create new stars. So you've got stars that do that. Betelgeuse was in the media all the way through COVID because they didn't have anything else to write about, how it was going to blow up soon because it was dimming and fading, but it was just dust and everything else. And I felt really good because I told everybody it was just dust long before the media did. Because Betelgeuse does that. It's Betelgeuse is the red star underneath the saucepan.
Okay. That was my question. What is Betelgeuse? Who is Betelgeuse? So it's the star underneath
It's the red
saucepan.
star beneath the saucepan. Yeah.
Do you see red stars? And I'm curious
Yes.
now. I have to
No,
go.
yeah, it'll look orange. Yep, you've got to go and have a look.
Will it
There's
be out
also
tonight?
moving across the sky from the red star Betelgeuse is a V shape in the sky, a V shape which has got a red star in it as well, and some really interesting things to look at your binoculars, which is Taurus, the bull's face, and just across there you've got the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades,
Right.
which is wonderful to look at in your binoculars as well.
Right.
So
Okay.
there are 2 red stars there that are quite easy to see.
Okay. So you can get the apps on your phone, be it an iPhone or
Or a Google Android, whatever they call it.
Android
Yep.
phone, and you can use your binoculars if you don't have a telescope, or you can get a
Binoculars are the best way to start.
Really?
Seriously, binoculars are the best way to start because most people have got them and they're cheap and you can use them for lots of things, like looking
Yeah.
at birds and distances and whales and whatever else one wants to look at with binoculars.
Yeah.
You can take them with you anywhere when you go camping or anything else.
Yeah.
So binoculars and an app on your phone is a great way to get someone started
Mm.
because there is so much you can see with binoculars
That you don't see with the naked eye.
that you don't see. Look at the Seven Sisters, the Pleiades cluster, which is also called Subaru by
Right.
the Japanese. And if you look at the Subaru emblem, you'll see why. Look at that in the binoculars. There's so many more stars, and you'll see fuzziness, haziness around those stars because they're very, very young stars. I mean, stars like our sun, which is called a yellow star, is halfway through its life. It's about 4.5 billion years old. It's got another 5 or 6 billion years, about 3.5 billion years. It's going to expand out and probably spell the end of planet Earth. But then it'll shrink back down again, and it's probably going to live, forever. And then it'll just go out one day in about billions of years of time. But we're talking about time frames that we can't see.
Yeah.
When we're looking at supernovas, which are stars that are dying,
Yeah.
a dying star, which then brings the birth of new stars. And we see them in other galaxies. In our own galaxies, there's at least one candidate, hopefully everyone's hoping will be in their lifetime, but it'll probably be in the next 100, 200 years, that could go off. That's quite a way away, so it won't affect us when it does. But it'll make a star in a part of the Milky Way where there are no bright stars, and it'll be visible by daytime.
Wow.
Back in 1987, the supernova went off. There are two cloudy areas in the sky you can see in the dark area, particularly at the moment. They're called the Large and Small Magellanic Cloud. They're galaxies. They're opposite the Southern Cross and the Pointers.
Okay.
They go around each other, like during the night. They go around. Down where you live, they're always up in the sky.
Right. Okay.
At some stage during the night, so they're there. But they're like two clouds. They look like two little clouds. Hence why they're called the Magellanic Clouds, after Magellan, who first saw them and called them the Cape Clouds back in the 1500s. They're worth looking at in binoculars too, if you can find them. But a star went off in the large, a supernova went off in the Large Magellanic Cloud that was actually visible naked eye, and it was visible naked eye for quite a while. And so here you've got a galaxy that's 200,000 light years away, and a star within that galaxy exploded, and we could see the light from it 200,000 years later here on Earth.
Wow. Wow. It's all very fascinating. Do you know what, Donna?
Because I'm looking back in time. That's my superpower. I look back in time.
Because there's so much to learn. There's so much to understand. But let's start with our phones and an app on our phone and binoculars. And then if you want to advance to a telescope, then you can. But start turning the lights off, and outside and inside, the ones that you don't need, and have an appreciation for the night sky.
Just look up.
Look
The
up.
same thing with the daytime sky. I mean, that young fellow from Beijing may have been able to see the moon if he had only looked up. Yes, there's a lot of pollution and all those things probably hid the moon. But just look up.
Yeah.
The moon is in the daytime sky for half the month.
Yeah, well, it is now, because it was there yesterday.
So, yeah, and that's great to look at in binoculars in the daytime sky. And it's probably better to try photographing it in the daytime sky as well, as long as it's, as long as it's not near the sun. Well, because it's not the brightest object.
Yeah, well, you've given me all these things to do, Donna, and I just have to make time.
You need a tripod.
I've got a tripod.
You need a tripod for your phone.
Yeah, I've got a tripod.
Because your hands shake too much.
I want to say thank you for sharing all your wisdom, your knowledge, your expertise, all those superpowers that you actually have. Is going back in history, having a photographic memory, knowing about, what constellations, what stars, what to look for in the sky. There are all these superpowers that you have, and you can pass on that information to so many people so that we can have a better understanding of our planet and what surrounds us.
Yeah. Just look up.
Just look up. Thank you, Donna. I have been talking to Donna Burton, who is more affectionately known, and we didn't get to that, as Donna the Astronomer. Let's talk about that before we go. How did you get the name Donna the Astronomer?
Several years ago, I was out at showing. I was out at Barradine, which is a little town about 45 k's from Coonabarabran, and I was showing the kids out there the transit of Mercury when Mercury went across the face of the sun through my special telescope. And I was at the infant school at St John's, and so the kids told me I couldn't be Dora the Explorer because that was already taken, so I had to be Donna the Astronomer. Out of the maids and babes. And and eventually, when I started my business up, that was like I have a name. I'm Donna, and I'm an astronomer.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I'm Faye Waterman, the conversation curator, and this has been What's Your Superpower, with Donna sharing all her superpowers. And we will be back again sometime soon. It's bye for now. Bye, Donna, and thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Faye.
Welcome. I'm Faye Waterman, the conversation curator, and this is What's Your Superpower, the podcast. And my guest today is the amazing Donna Burton, who is more affectionately known as Donna the Astronomer. And we will learn more about Donna and how she got the name Donna Astronomer shortly. But welcome, Donna, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Faye, for having me. Looking forward to it.
It's my pleasure, always my pleasure to have a conversation with you, Donna. Now, Donna, what we want to know about you is why you fell in love and became passionate about astronomy and how you share that with the world, and share some of your superpowers along the way, what you're really good at, and why people need to come and share time with you so that they can learn and have an appreciation of the night sky.
Well, that's a really long list there. So, so I was lucky. I grew up in the bush. So I grew up under dark skies, and something that I didn't realize that not everybody appreciated. It wasn't until I was probably almost an adult that I realized that how privileged I'd been to grow up in Outback Australia, where we have stars in the sky at night. And there are children in the world who've never seen the stars in the sky. And I didn't realize this until not that, I guess not that many years ago. And that probably rekindled and repushed my passion into starting my own, what I'm doing now. But yeah, but having grown up under there, I grew up under the wonders of it. And of course, also my age doesn't help in the sense that we go back in time. There wasn't anything to do at night while you're out, in the outback. My dad was a drover and we traveled around a lot. There was no TVs and no radios. Occasionally we'd have radio, but signals were pretty hard to get. And certainly no internet or anything, or iPads or iPhones or anything we have today. So all I did have was a night sky. And so we'd get chuffed off to bed. The kids and the grown-ups would be off playing poker or talking and looking after the animals and all the stuff that grown-ups do. And so there's nothing to do but look at the night sky. And I was so lucky that we had people from all different cultures, Indigenous people and people from Afghan cultures and Chinese and different cultures who'd gone back to the outback. Like my dad had gone back to droving because he'd been to Vietnam. And he came back from Vietnam and he was somewhat stressed out. And as we know, we didn't treat our Vietnam vets very well at all. And so he went back to the bush. And so went with him. And that's where I grew up. A lot of my growing up was with him in the bush. So it was really good. But with these other fellows who were also in similar, they were misfits in some ways. They didn't fit in the cities and everything else. And so you sort of had this really weird combination